Hello friends, so today we'll study about the cranial nerves, that is ninth, 10th and 11th cranial nerve. So first we'll study about the ninth cranial nerve. So the glossopharyngeal nerve, that is named as. So the cranial nerve ninth is the ninth nerve, and that is in paired nerve, means you will find both the side, the right and left cranial nerve. So in this video we will see how the anatomical course of the nerve and the motor, sensory and the parasympathetic functions of its terminal branches, that we will see. But before that we have to know that embryologically the glossopharyngeal nerve, it is associated with the derivatives of the third pharyngeal arch, the facial nerve from the second pharyngeal arch, and the mandibular and trigeminal nerve, that is actually derivatives of the first pharyngeal arch. So what we'll do here, here we will study about the sensory pathway, the special sensory pathway, the parasympathetic pathway and the motor pathway. So for that we have to see how the rootlets, they are connected centrally towards the cranial nerve nuclei that is present over the medulla, because the 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th cranial nerve, they are the part of your medulla and very little part of your pons. So here we have drawn the medulla. So you can see here both the side will find the pyramid and the pyramid, and this part will have the olive. So this is olive, and above to that you will find the inferior cerebellar peduncle. So the inferior cerebellar peduncle and this upper part, that you can see here, the fourth ventricle. So the glossopharyngeal nerve, that actually originates in the medulla oblongata of the brainstem, and it emerges from the anterior aspect of the medulla from the uh, post olivary sulcus, that you can see here. So this is the midline. Here you will find the nucleus, the pure motor nucleus is the hypoglossal nucleus. So both the side will find the hypoglossal nucleus, and just side to that will have the uh, dorsal nucleus of vagus, and just side to that we will find the nucleus tractus solitarius. So the nucleus tractus solitarius, the upper part, it is concerned with the taste sensation, but the lower part, that is concerned with the uh, general visceral afferent fibers, means the visceral sensation is carried through the axons, is innervated and connected to this lower part of the tractus solitarius. Now here you will find another nucleus, that is the nucleus ambiguous. So this nucleus ambiguous is the motor nucleus. Actually this nucleus, it is very ambiguous in nature, that's why the name given as a nucleus ambiguous, because it has both the voluntary and involuntary actions given to the nerves and to the targeted muscles. So here you will find the principal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, and below to that you will find this one is your spinal nucleus. So this spinal nucleus is for the general somatic afferent fibers. So those structures, they related to the uh, general somatic afferent fibers, the nerve which carries the general somatic afferent, means general sensation like touch, pain and temperature, they should be connected to this spinal nerve. Now we'll have that the here you can see this is the emerges of the ninth cranial nerve at the. So here you can see the nerve rootlets at the olivary sulcus. You will find this is the ninth cranial nerve, and below to that you will find the 10th cranial nerve, and below to that here you will find the cranial part of the spinal accessory, and here you will find the spinal cord. and here you will find from the C4, C3, C2, C1 you will find the spinal part of the cranial accessory nerve. Now here we will draw your head and neck area. So here you will find your short hard palate and the short palate and the uvula over here, and here you will find the tongue, and at this point below you will find the presence of your larynx and the trachea, and behind to it you will find the presence of your esophagus. Now this whole is your pharynx. Okay, so pharyngeal wall, and here we'll find the external ear. Now we'll bring the cranial nerve fibers to all these targeted areas. So the general sensation that is coming from the auricular area that innervates the external ear, that will be connected to the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Now here you can see the oropharynx and the posterior 1/3 part of the tongue and the tonsillar fossa and some part of the palate that carries the general sensation, and coming towards the uh, lower part of the tractus solitarius. Along with that, it also carries the general sensation, means you can say here the visceral sensation, from the carotid sinus and from the carotid body towards the lower part of the tractus solitarius, because that is concerned with the visceral afferent sensation, and that too general visceral afferent sensations. The special sensory that actually provides the taste sensation to the posterior 1/3 part of the tongue, that is actually carried by this 9th cranial nerve. Through here we will have this the taste sensation of 1/3 part of the tongue carried forward and taken to the upper part of the tractus solitarius, that carries the taste sensation. Like that we will find the inferior olfactory nucleus over here, and it carries the parasympathetic outflow that towards the tympanic branch, and from this tympanic branch the lesser petrosal nerve arises, and through the auricular nerve, yesterday we have studied about the auricular nerve, through after relaying to the otic ganglion, it is innervated to the parotid gland. Like that you will find the motor that innervates the stylopharyngeus muscle of the pharynx, and that should be connected to the nucleus ambiguous. So these are the sensory, special sensory, the parasympathetic and the motor fibers that is connected to the brain stem through the nerve, that is the 9th cranial nerve. So the tympanic nerve that arises is the nerve that traverses the jugular foramen, and it penetrates the temporal bone and enters the cavity of the middle ear. And here it forms the tympanic plexus, that is a network of nerve that provides the sensory innervation to the middle ear, internal surface of the tympanic membrane and the eustachian tube. So this eustachian tube, it also carries some taste sensation that is actually innervated by this 9th cranial nerve. And at this level, the stylopharyngeus, the carotid sinus, that nerve arises, and it descends down towards the neck to innervate both the carotid sinus and the carotid body, which provides information about the blood pressure and oxygen saturation respectively from the carotid body and from the carotid sinus. So the glossopharyngeal nerve that terminates by splitting into the several sensory branches, that is to the pharyngeal branch that combines with the fibers of the vagus nerve to form the pharyngeal plexus, and it innervates the mucosa of the oropharynx. Like that, you will find the lingual branch that provides the posterior 1/3 part of the tongue with general and the taste sensation. Like that, you will find the tonsillar branch that forms a network of nerves that known as the tonsillar plexus, which innervates the palatine tonsil. If we will consider the motor function, the stylopharyngeus muscle of the pharynx that is innervated by the glossopharyngeal nerve, and this muscle acts to shorten and widen the pharynx and elevate the larynx during the swallowing. The parasympathetic function that you can remember that this glossopharyngeal nerve that provides the parasympathetic innervation to the parotid gland, and these fibers originate in the inferior salivatory nucleus that I already have shown you of the cranial nerve ninth, and these fibers travel with the tympanic nerve to the middle ear from the ear. The fibers that continue as the lesser petrosal nerve and before synapting to the otic ganglion, and after synapting the postganglionic fibers they will go towards the auriculotemporal nerve to the parotid gland, and where they have the secretomotor effect. You have to remember that the facial nerve that splits inside the parotid gland to 5 branches inside the parotid gland, but it is the glossopharyngeal nerve that actually supplies the parotid gland. So, the clinical relevance of the ninth cranial nerve, you have to remember, main clinical relevance is the gag reflex. So, the glossopharyngeal nerve that supplies the sensory innervation to the oropharynx, and that's why it carries the afferent information for the gag reflex. And when a foreign object that touches the back of your mouth, so it stimulates the cranial nerve ninth uh, and started the reflex. So the efferent nerve in this process is the mainly the vagus nerve, that is the cranial nerve 10th. So an absent of the gag reflex that signifies the damage to the glossopharyngeal nerve. Study about the vagus nerve. You know that this is the 10th cranial nerve, and the vagus nerve, which is mostly afferent, vagrant in the head, neck, thorax and abdomen. It is both afferent and efferent to the pharynx and larynx. It emerges from the brain stem, that is from medulla, and passes through the jugular foramen. But here we will see that there will be the dorsal nucleus of vagus and the nucleus ambiguous and nucleus tectosolitorius. All these nuclei, the nerve fibers are coming out, and it emerges from the brain stem through the jugular foramen that you can see here. So this is your 10th cranial nerve, where it is it has superior and the inferior ganglia containing the cell bodies. So superior ganglia, otherwise known as the jugular ganglia, and inferior ganglia, otherwise known as the nodose ganglia, that contains the cell bodies of the afferent fibers. The vagus is then joined by the internal branch of the accessory nerve that you can see here, the fibers of which are actually distributed with branches of the vagus nerve. The vagus descends within the carotid sheath, that you know very well when we have done the anterior triangle. So it descends within the carotid sheath between the internal jugular vein and the common carotid arteries. The vagus then crosses anterior to the first part of the subclavian artery. Its subsequent course that will describe during the thorax and abdomen, but here only we will focus the vagus nerve course and distribution in the neck region. So the branches of the vagus nerve that we will see here, that here you can see this is on the ninth cranial nerve, here is the 10th cranial nerve. So here you will find the meningeal and auricular branch that is coming out of this vagus nerve, which contains the spinal fibers, cervical nerves 1 and 2 that actually gives the branch. Here you can see the cranial part of the 11th cranial nerve, here the spinal part. So at this point you will find the 10th cranial nerve, and this is the meningeal branch, or you can say this meningeal branch contains the spinal fibers, means from the cervical nerves 1 and the 2, C1 and C2, supplies the dura of the posterior cranial fossa. Also you will find the auricular branch here. So the auricular branch passes through the temporal bone, that is the tympanomastoid fissure, and supplies the auricle and the external acoustic meatus. The pharyngeal branch that you can see here, so the pharyngeal branch are the chief motor nerves to the pharynx and the soft palate, along with glossopharyngeal nerve fibers. These branches from the pharyngeal plexus on the constrictor of the pharynx you will find. The plexus supplies most of the muscles of the pharynx and the soft palate. Accessory fibers in the vagus are tested by asking the subject to say "oh." The uvula should proceed backward in the median plane. The superior laryngeal nerve that you can see here descends along the side of the pharynx and divides into internal and external laryngeal nerve. The internal laryngeal branch or the nerve is afferent from the mucosa of the larynx superior to the vocal folds. The nerve pierces the thyroid membrane and divides into terminal branches and communicates with the recurrent laryngeal nerve, that you can see here how they communicate with each other. The external laryngeal branch that you can see here, or branch or nerve that pierces the inferior constrictor of the pharynx and enters the cricothyroid muscle, supplying both muscles and the membrane. Then the depressor nerve, that is to the carotid branch. The carotid branch, otherwise known as the depressor nerve, that assists the glossopharyngeal nerve, that already we have studied how the glossopharyngeal nerve that innervates to the carotid sinus and the carotid body. So here the vagus nerve also gives accompany as a carotid branch and assists to the glossopharyngeal nerve in supplying the carotid sinus and the body. Like that you will find the cardiac branch. So here you will find the cardiac branch that arises in the neck and thorax and are often considered in superior, middle and inferior groups. They end in the cardiac plexus. The recurrent laryngeal nerve that you can see here supplies the mucosa of the larynx inferior to the vocal folds and all the intrinsic muscles of the larynx except the cricothyroid, because cricothyroid is by this external laryngeal branch. As a result of the embryologic development of the aortic arches, the right and left recurrent branch or nerve arise at a different level. The right nerve hooking inferior to the first part of the subclavian artery, whereas the left nerve to the arch of the aorta and the ligamentum arteriosum, that you can see here. how the uh, left recurrent laryngeal nerve hooks around the arch of the aorta over here. Here is your recurrent laryngeal nerve, and how it hooks around the ligamentum arteriosum. So both recurrent nerves ascend in a here you'll find the right recurrent laryngeal nerve which hooks around the first part of the subclavian artery. So both are closely related to the thyroid gland and inferior thyroid artery. Therefore, they are in danger in thyroid operations. So damage to the recurrent laryngeal nerve that renders the ipsilateral vocal fold motionless and results in alteration of the voice. The recurrent nerve gives off the the recurrent nerve that gives off the cardiac, tracheal and esophageal branches and a sensory branch to the laryngopharynx. It divides into two or more branches before passing deep to the lower border of the inferior constrictor of pharynx and behind the cricothyroid joint to gain the larynx. So here you can see the efferent fibers or the motor fibers marked in red and afferent fibers marked in blue, and the parasympathetic path that is in dotted line. So here you can see the vagus nerve uh, have the both afferent fibers and the efferent fibers and the secretomotor fiber. Here you will find the superior ganglion or the jugular ganglion, and here you will find the inferior ganglion or nodus ganglion, that is inferior ganglion here. So the vagus nerve, it actually receives the motor branch from the accessory nerve, and here you will find the afferent fibers from the vagus nerve. They just descend downward and gives branches through the vagus nerve and the uh, motor branch from the accessory nerve. All they comes towards the pharyngeal branch and to the pharyngeal plexus. So here you will find the branch for the carotid bars and the carotid sinus. Here you will find the cardiac branch, the esophageal branch, uh, and mainly which forms the cardiac plexus over here. And here you will find the superior laryngeal nerve, and here you will find the internal laryngeal branch. This is the external laryngeal branch. So the external laryngeal branch is the motor branch, whereas the internal laryngeal branch is the sensory branch. Here you will find the recurrent laryngeal nerve. So the recurrent laryngeal nerve along with the motor from the accessory nerve, they just hooks around the either to the first part of the subclavian artery at the right side or to the aorta near the ligamentum arteriosum, hooks around and comes back again to the larynx. So the branches summary that we can see here, that the from the superior ganglion we will find the meningeal branch and the auricular branch. Both are the sensory or afferent fibers. From inferior ganglion or from the trunk of the vagus, we will find the pharyngeal branches, superior laryngeal nerve that can be divided into internal laryngeal branch and the external laryngeal branch. Like that, you will find the depressor nerve or the carotid branch, which is actually inconstant. From the trunk of vagus, we will find the cardiac branches and the right recurrent laryngeal nerve. Innervates the smooth muscles of the esophagus. Two other branches that you will find inside the thorax, that is the left recurrent laryngeal nerve, which hooks under the arch of the aorta and ascending to innervate the majority of the intrinsic muscle of the larynx. And you will find the cardiac branches. So these innervate the regulate the heart rate and provide the visceral sensation to the organ. The vagal trunk then enter into the abdomen via the esophageal hiatus, an opening in the diaphragm you will find. And in this abdomen, the vagal trunks terminate by dividing into branches that supply the esophagus, stomach, and the small and large intestine and the bowel may in the form of yours up to the splenic flexor. The sensory function of this vagus, mainly the somatic and the visceral components to that gives the sensory function of this vagus nerve. So the somatic, that refers to the sensation from the skin and muscles. This is provided by the auricular nerve, which innervates the skin of the posterior part of the external auditory canal and the external ear. Like that, we will see the accessory nerve, that is the 11th cranial nerve, and it has a purely somatic motor function innervating the sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius muscle. So here we will see the motor function and the clinical relevance of this 11th cranial nerve. So as you know that traditionally the accessory nerve, that is divided into spinal and the cranial part. The spinal part that arises from the neurons of the upper spinal cord, specifically from the C1, C2, C3 and C4 spinal nerve rootlets, and these fibers they form the spinal part of the accessory nerve, which then runs superiorly to enter the cranial cavity via the foramen magnum. And the nerve that traverses the posterior cranial fossa and to reach the jugular foramen, and it meets with the cranial portion of the accessory nerve before it exiting the skull through the foramen magnum along with your glossopharyngeal and the vagus nerve. So outside the cranium, the spinal part that descends along the internal carotid artery and reaches the sternocleidomastoid muscle and innervates to the sternocleidomastoid muscle, then moves across the posterior triangle of the neck and supply the motor fibers to the trapezius muscle. The cranial component, that is the portion that is very much smaller and arises from the lateral aspect of the medulla oblongata, that already I have shown you, and it leaves this cranium via the jugular foramen where it actually contacts the spinal part of the accessory nerve. So immediately after leaving the skull, the cranial part that combines with the vagus nerve at the inferior ganglion of the vagus nerve, and the fibers from the cranial part then distributed through the vagus nerve. So due to this, the cranial part of the accessory nerve is considered as the part of the vagus nerve. So if you will see the clinical application of this 11th cranial nerve, that is mainly the examination of the accessory nerve. So the accessory nerve that you can examine by asking the patient to rotate their head and shrug their shoulders both normally and against the resistance, and you can simply observe the patient may also reveal the signs of muscle wasting in the sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius in case of your long standing nerve damage. The paralysis of this accessory nerve that can be assessed due to many common causes, mainly the accessory nerve damage is mainly due to the medial procedure, due to any medical procedure, in particular operation such as your cervical lymph node biopsy or the cannulation of the internal jugular vein that can damage and cause trauma to the nerve. So clinical features that includes the muscle wasting and the partial paralysis of the sternocleidomastoid that will result in inability to rotate the head or weakness in shrugging the shoulders. So damage to the muscles may also result in an asymmetrical neckline. So friends, here we have completed the 9th, 10th and 11th cranial nerve. So hope you have a good knowledge about this thing. So thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to get the new videos. Thank you.